Hello everyone, it is Wendy Ivy Martinez, also known as the Geek Goddess, and today we are going to be talking about some brand new releases for horror and thriller books that are going to be coming out in April. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. So per usual, I'm going to start from the beginning of the month all the way to the end of the month. So from the beginning of April all the way to the end of April, starting with Mr. Eric LaRocca and his brand new book, This Skin Was Once Mine and Other Disturbances. This is a collection of 4 different horror stories by the same author that brought us Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. And Eric LaRocca is known for his very dark horror novels and novellas and short stories, and in this one we have horror stories that I believe reference a lot of claustrophobia, or maybe one of them references claustrophobia, but I noticed that that was in the synopsis, so I wanted to make sure to bring that up. Can't go into this one into too much detail other than the fact that it says claustrophobia on it because it's a collection of short stories versus being one full-length novel. That one is coming out the beginning of April on April 2nd. The next one that we have is a thriller called She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica, and in this one we follow our main character named Megan, and she is a full-time nurse who is a single mom to a teenage daughter, and one day she is working at the ICU when a woman comes in named Caitlin, and she has suffered severe brain damage from jumping off of a bridge, and then she has this really horrible brain injury. The fact that she's still alive is literally a miracle. Witnesses start to come out and they say that Caitlin did not jump off the bridge, and she in fact was pushed by someone or something. And then Megan always tries to never attach herself to any of her patients, but she finds herself really entwined with Caitlin's story, and she finds herself really getting close to the family and trying to follow along with what exactly happened to Caitlin to cause this to happen to her. Did somebody in fact push her? Did she do it herself? And she gets a little bit too involved to the point where Megan becomes the next possible victim, as well as her daughter becoming, and their lives are becoming in jeopardy because whoever pushed Caitlin is now thinking that Megan is getting a little bit too close to the story, trying to almost solve it, and they want to get rid of her and her daughter now instead. I had a time where I was not reading thrillers because nothing was giving me that like I want to keep going sort of effect, but then I started reading None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and that thriller kick is back, and I'm excited. The next book that we're going to talk about comes out on April 9th, and that is Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes. This is a horror book that takes place in space, so sci-fi horror-ish, and this is basically about a scientist that studies this thing called ERS, which is when 29 people were murdered because they might have had like a mental breakdown. Basically, she's trying to realize and study the phenomenon as to what happened, what caused these people to murder each other on this small planet. So her and a small investigation team go to that abandoned planet and to try to figure out what exactly happened to prevent it in the future, when the captain, I believe, is unalived and these string of events sort of start to happen again the same way that it did in the past, and our main character is trying to stop it from becoming that severe to where all of them end up unalive. This book looks so good. I've never read sci-fi horror, but I'm pretty sure I would love that because I love aliens and extraterrestrials and just space in general. So when you combine those two things, I'm pretty sure this is going to be phenomenal. I know he wrote another book called Dead Silence that has very mixed reviews. I have yet to read that one, but I'm going to have to read both. The next book that comes out on April 9th is a thriller, and it is called Daughter of Mine by Megan Miranda. And this one is about a woman named Hazel who has recently inherited her house from her father, who was this really famous detective in the town. And so after she moves back in, there is this danger that is going on with the lake that's in the neighborhood, like the water levels are dropping, but as they're dropping, more secrets are being revealed in this lake, and she realizes that there might be some evidence to her as to what happened to her mother's sudden disappearance, and things take off from there. This is a thriller, so obviously it's going to be full of like plot twists and turns, and this one looks very interesting. I might be picking this one up as well. The next book that we are talking about is called The Gathering by CJ Tudor, and this is a combination of both a horror and a thriller. And in this one we are following a woman named Barbara who is from this small town in Alaska, and basically a little boy is found with his throat ripped out, and Barbara is sent to investigate, and they automatically think that it's this colony, this place called the Colony, which is filled with vampires. So in this world, vampires may in fact be real. And so she teams up with a previous investigator who has sort of turned into a recluse after coming a little too close to the crime scene and becoming a little too involved to the point where he was in danger as well. But nobody knows the colony more than he does, so she involves him, and then another body is found, and another one is found, and then there is this link of murderers, and they all think that it is from the vampires in this colony, but Barbara might start to think this might be a copycat, and this might not just be a bloodthirsty monster, but a twisted psychopath. I love that they combined the thriller and horror aspects. I love how in this world vampires are real and they're aware that they're real, yet they're still like serial unalivers and you don't know who did it. I just think this is a very interesting and unique twist on a thriller, and I might just have to pick this one up. The next book is called Darling Girls by Sally Hepsworth, I'm sorry, by Sally Hepsworth, and this is a thriller that is coming out on April 23rd, and this is about 3 different sisters who basically were always seen to be lucky. Everybody thinks that they have like really good lives and they're just really lucky people overall, when in reality nobody really knows how they grew up, and they were in fact with a very strict foster parent named Miss Fairchild, who had rules, who was never to be crossed, who seemed like she was a little bit toxic and maybe even violent at times. And the girls are suddenly forced into this whole investigation when a body is found underneath Miss Fairchild's home, and the girls are seen as the first eyewitnesses or possibly even the main suspects. So this is, again, a very interesting concept. We don't know who this body is. Is it Miss Fairchild? Is it another sister that they don't know about? The last book that we have is a horror, and it is called The Redemption of Morgan Bright by Chris Panettiere, and this one comes out on April 23rd as well. And this one we follow a sister whose other sister named Hadley was found unalive on a road right next to an asylum, and so Morgan decides to go undercover after the case grows cold and they can't really solve it, so it remains unsolved, and she takes on a whole new identity named Charlotte, and she steps into the asylum and checks in and tries to figure out what happened to her sister, and she starts to realize right away that this asylum is not right. There's something very strange, there's some different routines, and the more and more that Morgan starts to take on this personality of Charlotte, the more Charlotte feels more real to her than her actual personality. She finds herself slowly descending into this madness while still trying to keep a grip on reality to try and figure out what exactly happened to her sister Hadley. So that is the last one. It is a horror, and again, seems very interesting. It seems like it has some thriller elements to it as well. I will definitely be picking this one up because anything with horror with asylums I think is very fascinating to me as well. It seems like a very like psychological horror as well, so I'm very intrigued. Anyways, you guys, those are are 7 books that are going to be coming out during the month of April. Let me know which ones sound interesting to you, which ones you are most excited to pick up, and which ones you feel like you're just gonna skip. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you reached it to the very end of this video, put a little skull emoji because we had a lot of unalivers in this episode. So put a little skull emoji to let me know that you got to the end. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell to be notified when I post. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye!